by request, England's finest.
Hello, lovelies. Let's keep this experiment going, shall we? And let's have a look at what scintillating ideas, concepts, challenges, and so on that my commentariat has offered to me in the section below my videos. So, Blueman023 says, "Are you a paid Jew?" No, Blue Man, I'm an unpaid Jew, and at that, only an honorary Jew, thanks to my friend Uri, author of the rather good Rats role-playing game, which I should review, but he sent it to me on PDF, so it doesn't sit there nagging me, but I'll shill for it now. Go and check it out, it's very interesting. Let's see, Lamenta40k says of my review of Against the Dark Master, "This is a great review. Your thoughtful insights really were helpful, and I really liked this. If you're looking for combat options, Dungeon Crawl Classics has a great system for heroic deeds that I really like. Thanks." Yeah, that is quite nice in DCC, and I think it's in MCC as well, Mutant Crawl Classics, but it's only for fighters, whereas I felt that fighters should have maybe an advantage at it, and that other characters should be able to try heroic deeds as well. So maybe that's a thought, perhaps, for the future, or for kit bashing your own version of DCC and MCC. Against the Dark Master, well, go and watch my review. Violet Gray's 6384 says, "It's 2023 and people are still complaining about more diversity in fantasy settings. If a setting featuring people who aren't just the same white people is seen as a turn-off, it might be exploring why. It might be worth exploring why." Well, Violet, you obviously didn't watch the video or read any of the other comment threads, wherein I linked to one of Echo Chamberlain's videos. It's a turn-off because it kills verisimilitude and suspension of disbelief, and it actually represents a lack of diversity because every society is unrealistically diverse. So maybe, Violet, maybe you should watch again and listen this time, and go and watch the Echo Chamberlain video. See, in a medieval society, travel, or a medieval-ish society, travel isn't easy. Populations don't mix that much. People from other areas are exotic and super interesting, and you find that in the historical record of the real world. Not everywhere should have the same societal values or racial mix as modern coastal America. It's a very parochial, very Americana-centric view of things, and it's just a lot less interesting. Societies and their makeup should be different. You can have diversity by having lots of different societies and lots of different racial makeups in your fantasy world, rather than stirring everything into a big grey mess. Waffles Waffleson says of my review of the Alien RPG that he quite enjoyed it for just being a system he can run a sci-fi campaign in. Lancer and Starfield just don't do it for him. I've got a review of Lancer somewhere on the channel, which you can go and check out. Starfield doesn't ring any bells. But Lancer, yeah, that was a very schizophrenic game. It didn't really seem to know what it was. Alien seems to be designed with sort of episodic or one-off style sort of play. So yeah, I can see how it might be good for a pick up and go sort of game. Back to white supremacists arguing with me on the Kalergi Plan videos. No, actually, that's just a really long, irrelevant comment, so let's ignore that one. I did a Pendragon review ages ago now, and Dash64 says, "I'm always down for more people bringing awareness to Pendragon. It's my favourite RPG. I wouldn't really call it a story game, at least by modern standards. Players don't really have mechanics to impact plot or story, and has solid conflict resolution mechanics. It is by no means rules dense, but it's still a traditional RPG. I was looking at it within a historical context, so yeah, maybe by the standards of Powered by the Apocalypse or other pretentious wankery, it's not a story game, but by the standards of the time, it definitely is more of a story game. It's where the seeds of story games come in, I think. So I did another video ages ago, kind of taking the piss out of people who said that the OSR was being destroyed by the right wing, or that it was a right wing echo chamber or whatever. Hexcrawler, good name, says most of the fascism in gaming these days comes from the left. Well, that's literally impossible. Fascism is, despite what you may have been told, an innately right-wing philosophy, because it is strictly hierarchical, anti-egalitarian, forms various hierarchies based on perhaps race, for example, and other issues. You can call this monster wearing the skin suit of the left authoritarian, sure, but authoritarian and fascist are not interchangeable. Authoritarianism is a part of fascism, but you can find authoritarianism in plenty of other political philosophies and ideas. So, yeah, please stop misusing political terms. It really, really scratches my face. I did a review of Pathfinder, which was controversial somehow. certain groups of people really get a bug up their ass if you even slightly criticize their favorite game. So, Mirius says, I don't like Pathfinder 2. I play with pen and paper. Pathfinder 2 is a video game. The math is 4th edition D&D, the class feats are 4th edition powers, spellcasters are nerfed, paladins are an unrecognizable, mutilated reaction monkey thing. Pathfinder 1 and 5e are better. I mean, when I said, is it Paizo's 4th edition, I didn't mean a direct one-for-one comparison. I just meant in terms of being a big misstep. 4th actually sold okay, at least the initial core books, because it was D&D, and I'm sure Pathfinder 2 did okay purely because it's Pathfinder, but I just think it was a misstep on the part of Paizo, in the same way that 4th edition was a misstep on the part of Wizards of the Coast. So that's really what I meant when talking about that. There's been rather a lot of harassment and nonsense on the Kalergi Plan videos. Yeah, this is, you're getting to experience a little bit of what I see day in, day out on these videos. Hairy Cods 2273 says, he stays on one thing, plan, because he is absolutely correct about the book not having the word plan in writing. Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Hairy Cods, because essentially you've just admitted that I was right, and anything else you argue or say after that is just pure nonsense. Right? The conspiracy theory that I was debunking is the one that there is a plan put together by Count Coudenhove Kalergi, which was presented in his books Pan-Europa and Practical Idealism. This is the claim that the far-right nonsense mongers have made, that there is this spooky, scary plan and that it's in these books. It is not in those books. There is no plan. Count Coudenhove Kalergi simply predicted what cheaper and easier access to air travel and transnational communications and economics, what that would do. It's a prediction. If the weatherman says it's going to rain tomorrow, right? That's a prediction. And if it rains tomorrow, he didn't make it rain. He accurately predicted what would happen. If you want to argue elsewise that there is some sort of plan, knock yourself out and I will debunk that as well. But if there's no plan in Coudenhove Kalergi's books, then that conspiracy theory is debunked, because that's the claim. Staying on the theme, DocDoc4129, these people are often repeated names and digits because they keep getting banned, says, ask any politician what plans are in place to help white people and watch them squirm like the parasites they are. Yet they'll have pre-programmed responses for almost any other race. I rest my case. There's your plan. Dig deep enough into that family tree of almost anyone in the higher echelons of the US corporate offices, you'll find said family trees are indeed Jews, who loathe pure-blood Christian conservative whites. Kalergi worked lockstep with the likes of Edward Bernays, and he certainly had many plans, so his plans were intertwined with others to destroy white America via advertising. And he goes on in much the same vein. Our populations are majority white, so any policies which rarely are rolled out that help everybody are going to help everybody, including white people, right? And there are concerns that affirmative action and so on has left poor whites behind. This is why class analysis is so much more important than Americanocentric racial analysis, which tends to confuse the one for the other. And there is some small, slight movement on these issues. I'm not American, as you may be able to tell by the accent. And yeah, this Americanocentric viewpoint from both sides in this culture war just ticks me off. There are other people in the world, there are other countries, other political systems and contexts and so on. You're not the entire world, and most Western nations aren't as Christian as America, even those that have state religions and so on. You're very much an outlier, and the very idea of pure blood whites, there's really no such thing. Go get your 23andMe done, especially in America, where so many of you are descended from us Brits who have always been a mongrel race. Perhaps that's why we're so vital and capable compared to others, bar our aristocracy, of course. This is just nonsense, and you can't seem to help yourselves with this anti-Semitism, right? You just lead with the racism. And then you can just safely dismiss anything else you have to say, because clearly you've got the brainworms. Bruno did a few videos on the channel for me as part of the Roll for Insight series, and please do leave more questions, or if you're a game designer or influencer and want to participate, let me know. The Angry Piper says, I'm waiting for the video where Bruno admits his favourite game is anything the Angry Piper runs. In fact, I'm a little hurt that this wasn't it, but I'll be watching future videos with hopeful anticipation. Seriously though, thanks for the take on Machinations, because Bruno decided to suck up to me by reviewing Machinations of the Space Princess. It sounds very cool, and now it's on my radar, which means I'm going to buy it. And thanks for the link. Now I get to watch Bruno as GM for a change, since he's perfected the art of having other people run games for him. That's true. My current post-mortem obsession is Agents of Swing. I'm absolutely dying to run that. Watch some of the old spy-fi serials from the 60s and 70s first to get you in the mood. And you can find episode guides for most of those series, like The Avengers and so on, online. And they're perfect to rip off for plots, because not many people know them, and they could all use a bit of updating. So cheesy, old-fashioned plots often make the best to rip off for tabletop games of any kind, not just Agents of Swing, because you can actually improve on them. Adrian NF9M says, YouTube censurando los videos de Plan Kalergi y solo publica los que le ponen en duda. Ya. Bueno estente. Butros Gali, which basically translates to YouTube censors people talking about the Kalergi plan, but not people debunking it. And as we've seen, that's probably because you're all a little bit racist. Still on Kalergi, Jimmy Thomas string of digits says, "You're hilarious." HILERIOUS, 3 exclamation marks. And a setup! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Which, of course, isn't an argument, is misspelt, and I'm not sure how I can be a setup rather than being someone who sets people up. This is the level of retardation one has to deal with in these circumstances. Most unwelcome, really. What else do we have here? Of Pathfinder, Almanac of Sleep says the art looks shit. I think that's a little unfair. The artwork in Pathfinder is stylistic. It may not be to your taste, but it certainly has a lot more character than anything Wizards has put out in a long while, which all seems to be kind of pastel-coloured mush. Though that one picture of that halfling from Pathfinder 2nd edition will haunt my sleep until the day I die. Liberal Hyena 9760 says, "I've just watched a video from Dungeon Master James, which I expected to be an interview with you, but which was in fact a tirade about your supposed inconsistency, hypocrisy, etc. over free speech and other such nabby-pamby nonsense. His comments seemed a little confusing as he seemed to identify free speech, which the UK apparently doesn't have, to gun ownership and other signs of macho libertarianism. I assume you're aware of his views. If not, this particular interview to which he invited you to respond. Have you done so or intend to, or are you, as seems much the wiser course, planning to ignore him?" It might be wiser, but as far as social media and YouTube is concerned, it would probably make more sense to reply. I don't know if I did, but I'm guessing the contention is over COVID disinformation and things like that. I don't think I've stifled anyone's free speech on that matter. I have publicly disagreed and I have removed myself from certain contexts where that sort of thing went on. But I don't think I've actively censored anyone or called for censorship or reported anyone or anything. I would, however, say that such an instance is one of the few instances in which censorship is justified. Why? Because disinformation about a public health emergency, which is killing people, would meet the demands of the harm principle, which is, it's only justifiable to restrict one person's liberty to prevent them from doing harm to themselves or others. So that may be what the disagreement was. You did give me the link, but I still haven't checked it out yet. I will remedy that at some point. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Back to the Kalergi plan. It's just relentless. SMG 2166 says, "We get it. You're Jewish." You're really defying that whole assumption that you're just a bunch of anti-Semitic racist cunts. Hey. Oh, which reminds me, there's been this big fuss recently with the RPG pundit going after the basic expert. I somehow conspired to miss most of this in my feeds, so as far as I understand it, the fuss is that the basic expert had someone on his channel to discuss games who happens to be possibly quite virulently anti-Semitic. I don't know, I haven't bothered looking into it. But the latest is that Pundit has been suspended, possibly banned, off Twitter for something he said. And I don't think it's anything about what he said other than his use of the word cunt, which has often been used on social media as an excuse to repress my people, the British, who use the word cunt like punctuation. So I think that's what the problem is. Nothing else that he said or did, and I just can't be arsed with the whole thing. I stepped outside games to review Valerian, the comic book series. Dracopol says, "I must have read some original Valerian comics, probably in the compilation magazine Pilote, where it appeared from 1967 to 1970, but the movie lacked the original flavour, replacing the capable man of SF with some young twink and a non-redhead for Laureline. It just I don't understand what they thought they were doing with the film, but it is still a visual feast and is still worth watching the film Valerian purely for the visuals and the imagination that's on there, even though the story and Valerian himself and everything aren't really up to snuff. What else have we got here? Jem Hoare says, I've got making a comic on my to-do list. I've written a script. Does anyone want to read it? To which there was a somewhat uncharitable reply from Liberal Heine. I mean, somehow I missed this comment, but I can take a look if you really want, but I'm trying not to do too much. Gleemanurks says regarding Valerian, I was unaware of these comics until now, though I'd seen the movie and thought it had such great concepts and style presented in a glorious, inchoate mess. Your commentary was very helpful and appreciated, especially concerning the male/female interplay between the original characters in the comics. Also, watching you flip through the pages, I know now this is a definite book to buy. Thank you for sharing with us. You're welcome. I tend to assume that people know what I'm talking about, and I try not to presume ignorance or the things on behalf of my audience. So I'm glad that was able to help. Liberal Hyena says, again, of Valerian, I'm pleased you reviewed this and found your comments on European comics in general interesting. My knowledge and experience of them certainly lags well behind their American and Japanese counterparts. I don't think I'd ever heard of Valerian before the film appeared. I hadn't seen it and immediately forgot about its existence, as I intensely dislike The Fifth Element. Ooh, controversial. Other than this series, what would you recommend? I've been planning to get the recent adaptations of the Elric stories for some time, though I seem to recall there was at least one earlier one. I've read a couple of books by Enki Bilal, some by Manara and Pratt, and have a copy of the Inkal not yet read, but otherwise very little. I mean, those are good solid choices. Sorry, I mean, I said I did reply, so I'll just summarise for you here. Yeah, even though I have an interest in European comics, they can be hard to find, especially in English, and with Heavy Metal magazine kind of going off the rails. They used to translate and reprint a lot of continental European comics. I would suggest perhaps Gods in Chaos, Bedlam of Immortals, any collected reprints of translations for Heavy Metal, but don't buy them direct from Heavy Metal because they're unreliable. Passage of the Wind, maybe Rank Xerox. I think that's Italian or Spanish, but that's a good one, though a little bit controversial. 13 is a good one. Yeah. It's tricky. I don't really know what's available these days. Go and ask in a comic shop if you can find one. Some of you sent in some questions for Roll for Insight, which was very nice of you, so thank you very much. Back to the Kalergi plan nonsense. Yet again, what do we have this time? MD Shafiq says, South Africa was a superpower under white rule. It was never a superpower. And while it was under apartheid, under white rule, it was an international pariah state. Right? And everything that it may have had was based on subjugation of the majority of the population and their repression. We only got rid of apartheid in South Africa in my lifetime. And sure, the ANC isn't doing particularly well and hasn't done particularly well for a very long time, but there's nothing to say that this wouldn't have been the same under White Rule, because most of the problems, the structural deficiencies and so on, are international or economic, and there's no reason to think things would be any different under any other set of rulers or whatever. South Africa has deep structural and other issues, right? And incompetence and corruption isn't unique to black African governments. Just look at the British government, for God's sake. So just fuck off. What else have we got? More. I told you, it's just an endless parade of bullshit on these Kalergi videos. Spike2227 says, this guy is definitely a shill and playing stupid. God, I wish I was being paid, given the pain in the arse you all are. He couldn't show me the plan in the book, just like everybody else. He also says that mixed race is and will always be unnatural. It's the consequence of lust and fetishism. Yet this guy is totally ignorant, which is a non sequitur. There's nothing wrong with lust or fetishism, and mixed race is the norm. Again, go and get your genes tested. Hey. Oi caramba. Doc Necrotic says, Pathfinder 2 was a huge disappointment for me. I wanted to love it too. I didn't mind a lot of what you talked about at first, but in play I wasn't a fan. The 3-action economy was a lot more overrated in practice too. The new layout with features to toy with was enticing, but it was just juggling the details and hodgepodge in practice. Would I still play it? I guess so, but I've no need to buy any of it. It's just not really on my radar anymore. Yeah, I kind of feel the same about it. Some of the comments that I had on my review were really bigging up the 3-action economy, but it's not new. I'm sure that's been in other games, and it's something I've had in my games that I've written for some time, or some variation on it. So it's not innovative or anything. It's nice, but it's not a huge unique selling point. Makalura says, I like your line, degenerate is just the far right's problematic. I think, as we can see from the comments on the Kalergi videos, that's very much true. Almanac of Sleep says, verisimilitudes via racial mixing. They never seem to apply this intelligently, like, say, a setting with an island nation whose economy is based on trade, being heavily diverse in terms of people, contrasted with homogeneous tribes on the coast. Something like that is interesting because it springs forth tensions and story pathos, which in turn leads to ideas for the game. Yeah, I agree entirely. People assume because you criticize their diverse settings that you're somehow being racist, because they have a very coastal American or urban modern metropolitan view of what diversity is. Diversity is a variety of different things, and if every single society in your fantasy game is the same diverse mix of coastal American metropolitan multicolored rainbow people, you don't have diversity, you have homogeneity. Will in New Haven says, being old is a problem, you young punk. I'm 78 and I know. I'm starting to feel my age, so I agree. But if you're 78, why the fuck are you wasting the few seconds you have left on this earth watching my videos? Fuck off and do something. Hire a prostitute, do a line of coke, something. Live your life. Aaron the Relentless says, just came back to this review, which is one of Stars Without Number, where you essentially gave the same rating to one of my favourite games, well, one of the games in my favourite line, and Pathfinder 2e, to verify the comments aren't as vitriolic. Also that I personally didn't come on here and call you names or wrong in your interpretation, just because I disagreed with your overall conclusion. I did think you made fair points and appreciate your point of view. I always get in on Kevin Crawford's Kickstarters, where he has offset prints done of sexy synth zone binding, heavy paper stock, and the pictures pop instead of fade like print-on-demand printing does. Thanks to the review. Well, yeah, I'm glad you didn't slag me off. I'm glad you received my reviews in the spirit in which they are offered, which is mostly my opinion, and I try, but often fail, to be constructive in my criticisms. So I'm glad someone at least gets that. What else do we have here? Almost run out. Judd Goswick says, content idea. How about making a series, making an obscure or interesting character for each of your games? That way you can show them off and be creative about it. You can also tap other content creators to do so. Tell me about your character is pure death. So no. I won't be doing that. That is the death of good content. All right. That will do for now. We'll see how this does, and maybe I'll keep doing these comment videos. But considering it that most of it seems to be abuse and accusations of being Jewish, stemming from white supremacists, maybe I won't. But we'll see. At least this way you get to experience what I experience. So enjoy that, I guess. I have some Roll for Insight videos to record, so I will see you later. Zang.
In the worlds before Monkey, primal chaos reigned. Heaven sought order, but the phoenix can fly only when its feathers are grown. The four worlds formed again and yet again as endless eons wheeled and passed. Time and the pure essences of heaven, the moisture of the earth, the powers of the sun and moon, all worked upon a certain rock, old as creation, and it became magically fertile. That first egg was named Thought. The God Buddha, the Father Buddha said, with our thoughts we make the world. Elemental forces caused the egg to hatch. From it then came a stone monkey, and the nature of monkey was irrepressible.
Irrepressible is a simple RPG of fortune cookie wisdom and martial arts, taken from Journey to the West. You can buy it at lulu.com, post-mort.com, and drive-through RPG.